Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And you can of course also find this rebroadcast later on in the week on a variety of other networks. So lots of places to check it out. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to 2017. If my voice sounds a little funny, it's because I'm actually kind of coming down with a bit of a cold. My throat is kind of sore. I've got my hot toddy is next to me, so hopefully I'll be able to get through the next 2 hours. I was planning on having my sister Emma joining me again for today's episode, but thankfully, or not thankfully, but because of the wonderful subway system here in New York, my sister will not be making it today. Maybe for the second hour, but I'm not sure. The trains are all screwy. So it is just going to be me today. And before we get into the many topics that I think we'll be discussing today, just some quick kind of housekeeping stuff. Especially because I know I've been maybe not as involved in the show or in the sort of day-to-day stuff like emails and Twitter and things like that the past couple of weeks, but that was really just mainly because of the holidays and things like that. So I know that people have gotten a bunch of emails and some messages on Patreon and stuff, and believe me, I've read everything. I appreciate all the wonderful, the sort of holiday thank you stuff, and that's all been wonderful. And I will be responding to everybody. I've just been kind of busy trying to relax basically, and now I'm feeling a little sick, so getting back into the swing of things. So I'll get back to you. Don't think that I've just sort of been ignoring everyone out there. Thank you also to Mark for just becoming a Patreon subscriber, I think a couple of days ago. And also thank you to Jenny, who resubscribed to the Porkins Policy Radio Patreon. So again, if you want to support my work, if you like what you hear here, if you want to show your gratitude and help to build the show more, you can of course become a subscriber on Patreon, and that's just patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. And that is for Porkins Policy Radio and the CIA in Hollywood. And of course, if you want to help out for Porkins Great Game, that there's a separate Patreon. You can find all that on my website. And speaking of Porkins Great Game, we will be out with a new episode. Christoph and I had intended to get that episode out before January, but we just couldn't. There were a lot of things going on with both of us, and we just didn't have the time to get a new episode out, but we will, and we will have a bonus episode. And there's been, tune in for that because there's been just so much going on in geopolitics in Central Asia and in the Middle East and the Caucasus, and I think we'll probably touch on some of that later on in today's episode. But lots to discuss with Porkins Great Game, and so stay tuned. I'm hoping maybe. If not next week, the episode, then definitely the week after that, the week of the 16th, we should have something up. Also, I know I had mentioned this a while back, and people might have forgotten, but I will be putting up a special Patreon link on my Patreon page for everybody that subscribes. So if you're giving $1, if you're giving $20, $100, it doesn't matter. Everyone is going to get access to Brian Heiss's OJ Mark Furman documentary. And I think I mentioned this maybe it was the episode the South Park episode with my sister. I think I mentioned that. But all through the month of January, and maybe a few days after, because I know it's already the 3rd and I haven't posted it yet. But all through the month of January, all subscribers to Porkins Great Game through Patreon will have access to Brian's excellent film on OJ and Mark Furman, the Mark Furman tapes. It has been, it's unseen outside of a handful of people, including myself. It's an excellent movie, especially for people that are maybe a little unfamiliar with the Mark Furman or with the OJ case. And really, there's a great stuff, even beyond just the Brian's sort of expose or look into the Furman tapes. There's amazing stuff. He's got a great timeline that, again, you can find on my site that he references in the documentary. Really great stuff. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll have that posted up later tonight. If not, then it should be up by tomorrow on Wednesday. So you'll just go to Patreon, and if you are a subscriber, you'll be able to see the post there, and you just follow the description. There'll be a special link for all of the Patreon subscribers to go check that out. Also, for subscribers on Patreon, I will finally be posting an interview that I did with our friend Chuck Ochelli that I did I think it was like a week ago. And again, I just got so busy and I just didn't have the time to post it. But I will be posting that. So check that out, an exclusive interview that Chuck and I did for his listeners and my listeners as well. And we talked about South Park, spoiler alert, but really fun interview, lots of interesting stuff, some stuff that I didn't touch on when me and my sister spoke last time. So lots of exciting stuff on the horizon, plenty more as well. I've got some other little projects and ideas for the subscribers and for the listeners and stuff, and maybe some ways to make it a little bit more interactive. I'd love to have a little bit more, audience participation in the show. So, stay tuned for some more updates and things like that. But I guess we should attempt to get into today's show. If it sounds a little rough around the edges, that's because it is. Full disclosure, I almost didn't do the show today because I was really feeling like super shitty when I woke up. Just tired, and my mind just kind of like over the holiday just completely tuned out from like everything. I just wasn't really paying attention to a lot of stuff that was going on in the news and politics and things, and in the alt media. I just kind of took a break from all of that. I took a break from pretty much everything. And mostly kind of lazed around my house, watched quite a lot of anime, read a lot of comic books and things like that. Just the sort of stuff I like to do to kind of unwind or to really zone out. But I did think that, as I was thinking about, I got to do this show, on Tuesday. I got to do the first show of 2017. And I guess because we didn't really cover anything, sort of like the end of the year roundup episode, beforehand, I thought that we could kind of talk about a little bit about, 2016, what that year was, for me and for many other people, but also kind of looking ahead at 2017, because there's definitely, quite a lot on the horizon. There's quite a lot out there. So this will sort of be a kind of a sort of look ahead and kind of rounding out how this year went. And for all of you faithful listeners out there keeping score, this is episode 75 of the show. So that's kind of a bit of a milestone in and of itself. So I think it's somewhat fitting that we are talking about the end of a very momentous year and the beginning of what will probably be an even crazier one. So 2016, God, what a year. It was pretty crappy, I guess, for most people. And oddly enough, that did not hit me until like very recently, only within the past like week or so did it really hit me like how shitty 2016 was. Because on a kind of personal level, I liked 2006, or there was a lot of positive stuff that happened for me in 2016. Obviously, this radio show being one of the big ones. Of course, this writing project that I am involved in, and that is, getting ever closer to actually being published. And this is, I guess I can say it now because I know I've hinted at it before, and I've sort of mentioned it here and there, and on some of the bonus episodes. But myself, Tom Secker, and a host of other people, some of them you will definitely be familiar with, some you may not. We all contributed to an issue of the American Journal of Economics and Sociology, and the issue was all about, broadly speaking, the CIA in Hollywood, but also the DoD, but sort of, I guess even more broadly, state sponsorship of entertainment. So, talking about sort of propaganda or entertainment as propaganda. That's what the whole issue is. And Tom and I were very involved in constructing the issue and in getting a lot of people. And Tom and I both have pieces in there. And like I said, you'll recognize some of these names, very popular people that have been on the CIA in Hollywood, people that we've referenced before, and some new faces. And I'm excited to read. I'm excited to read all of them, but there's a few that I'm very excited about in particular. So we've been involved in that, and that has been a truly amazing experience in terms of like getting better at writing. Again, faithful listeners of the show may remember all the way back before this radio show was a podcast even, that it was a blog, and I used to write on the website a lot, and that writing was like really dreadful, and I'd probably encourage everybody to not go and check that out. But I did start writing, and I enjoyed writing even though I wasn't all that good at it, and then when I started the podcast, it was sort of I kind of began to despise writing more and more. Anybody that knows me knows I hate writing the episode blurbs, the descriptions of the episodes. And people will notice probably that they've become shorter and much more succinct. And I used to for an episode, even if it was a short one, it could be like a 45-minute podcast that I did, and it would be like a 3-page, description where I would mention every single thing. And I've just sort of given up on that. But writing was something that I did enjoy doing, but was something that I think I built up in my head that it was something that was like above me, that I couldn't really do it, or I couldn't do it well. But in writing this article, I kind of rediscovered how much I loved writing. And that I can be good at it, when I'm really sort of focused, and of course in this sort of situation, you've got an editor, and you've got, people to give you feedback, and you've got, deadlines, which, are stressful, but deadlines are great for writer's block, because you have to write it. You have to finish whatever you're doing because it has to be in. So that kind of pressure is nerve-wracking, but there's a reason that it exists, and it also just sort of forces you to accept that, well, maybe this won't be, totally amazing, but I've got to get it out as best I can. So that's something just, for reference for people. Deadlines are stressful, but I think necessary, at least with a certain type of writing. So, that's been great too. That's been a wonderful experience, and I think it's going to be even more wonderful, of course, when it comes out. I'll have all the sort of details on where you can find this online if you want to purchase a physical copy. I'll provide all of that kind of stuff. I know I'd mentioned, maybe giving out some signed copies. I'll see what that entails. Because it might be possible for me to, if you want to give me like a donation, and then I will buy a copy of it, sign it, and then send it out to you. But we can figure all of that out when we get to it. But, for me, 2016 wasn't quite so bad, or there were a lot of sort of things in my sort of personal, professional life that were great. And I kind of viewed much of 2016 like that. And I know that, everyone was sort of, very obsessed with the election, and I was too. But I guess I wasn't one of those people that was like beside myself on election night, unlike most of my friends. And even, when, all the votes were counted and whatnot, and it's going to be Trump, obviously this is terrifying and, something that we should be concerned about. But even that didn't really kind of hit me as like something to be, upset about or something to sort of not look forward to. And that was kind of how it was for me. And then I don't know what it was, if it was the sort of weight of all of these things. But all of a sudden, like sometime like last week, I think, it really just hit me like, wow, this has been a pretty fucking awful year overall. For most people, I think. Maybe not for me specifically, but for most people. And I guess I could see that more and more, as I sort of took a step back and started looking, and, then you look at all of the horrible, awful stuff going on around the world, and obviously 2016 looks pretty dire and pretty horrible. And, you can look at any number of, geopolitical, conflicts going on, either in the Middle East or Africa or Central Asia or, Europe, or, basically name a place. The economy, the sort of rising racist right-wing, sentiment both here and in Europe as well. And I guess overall everywhere, kind of, to a degree at least. So all of those things are really horrible. But I think 2017 seems like it's going to be even more of a doozy of a year, and maybe, fingers crossed, will top 2016 as a truly shitty, horrible time to be alive. And I guess, I'd like to kind of maybe dissect a couple of different parts of 2017, or my predictions for what's going to be important, what we should be sort of following and looking at. And I know that seems kind of like, very cliche. Everybody does sort of like an end of the year wrap up, but, that's what today's episode is going to be. So, I guess I think we should start with the thing that I always look to, and the sort of the topic that, from the very beginning, that's what I've always sort of been most interested in. And I think it's a topic that ultimately decides so much of how everything else kind of plays out, and that's geopolitics. I think that ultimately geopolitics and the sort of constant struggle between superpowers and secondary powers and tertiary powers and whatnot, that ultimately kind of sets the stage for so many other things, including, culture, how we progress as a society in terms of culture, types of movies that we're into, the types of art, the types of cultural movements that take sway. I think geopolitics in many ways sets the stage for all of that. So let's look geopolitically, sort of, at 2016, how that kind of set the stage. But 2017, what are we going to see? So I think the big one, the one that sort of keeps jumping out in my face at least, is the war in Syria, this sort of the quote unquote Syrian civil war. Because that is, in large degree, I think is maybe not ending necessarily, but it's certainly moving, closer to some sort of resolution. That there seems to be, finally, I think, we're starting to see the prominent actors in that conflict, who have been pushing for a destructive sort of agenda. So we're talking about the U.S., Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UK, France, sort of Western countries. But the big ones really, the U.S., the CIA, the Saudis, the Qataris. I think they're starting to kind of accept that, for better or worse, at least right now, as it stands, they're not going to achieve the desired outcome that they want to. And I think, of course, there's a variety of reasons for that, but I think they've come to slowly accept that, and they've come to accept that ultimately Assad has won. Okay, I think Assad's, the Syrian army liberating Aleppo, or at least large sections of Aleppo, that's really significant. And that was the kind of, I think, the turning point in the West and other countries sort of accepting that this is just how it's going to be. And again, this is something I think that was always sort of in the cards. It's something that, there's like a desire sometimes with the alternative media to kind of, I think, think of the sort of worst case scenario. So, the worst case scenario in Syria, of course, would be some, I think it would sort of be like Libya times 10, where you would have basically, CIA, Saudi, Qatari-backed jihadi groups acting as the actual sort of fighting, rebel force, and ISIS and al-Nusra and these sort of groups acting, al-Zinki, it's another big one, acting as the sort of, enforcers. They're sort of the quote rebel army. And then they would sort of defeat Assad, and then suddenly you would get these sort of so-called progressive, liberal, civil society types popping up, and maybe even some sort of type, like kind of like a Muslim Brotherhood sort of allegedly progressive Islamist groups. They would pop up and sort of fill the vacuum, and Syria would become sort of like a Libya type scenario. I think that was always their goal. That's obviously not, I think that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to play out the way that they wanted it to. And I think they've begun to accept that. And again, there's a variety of reasons for this. I think one of them in part was a reluctance among at least enough people within the White House to not kind of go full scale with this. A reluctance among, certain very high profile people to not say, really fund the hell out of these jihadi groups, to dump more weapons, more training, to maybe, or to go the kind of full U.S. boots on the ground. Obviously, they're there, they're operating, they're definitely helping. I think they're still present in certain parts of Syria, but that became more and more muted. That became more and more impossible to kind of get. Plus with the fact that I think, in the end, even the people that despised Assad or despised the regime that existed, there's no way that they were willing to accept, well, let's become virtually just human shields for al-Nusra and some of the more radical jihadi groups in places like Aleppo and elsewhere within Syria and also in Iraq. They weren't ready to kind of acquiesce all of their freedom and whatnot and basically just become human shields for them. And the tide was turned. The propaganda value of, or the sort of, scenario that the West had been presenting had slowly been, etched away to the point where even mainstream commentators were talking about, well, what is who are the rebels? Do they even exist anymore? I mean, notice like nobody even says the FSA, the Free Syrian Army. They don't exist. If they even, I don't think they really existed, in any meaningful sense prior to that, but they're not there. There are no more, there's no more of these sort of Syrian defectors. There's no more of, these, Syrian civil society groups. There aren't these sort of, wonderful, rebel groups that are vetted by the West that are really just actually, Jeffersonian Democrats who want to, save Syria and turn it into some sort of Western paradise. They don't exist. And they the people that were pushing that could no longer succeed in ultimately presenting that image to the world. And ultimately then, the Syrian conflict has shifted dramatically in favor of some sort of, I think, some sort of resolution. I don't think the fighting is necessarily going to end. I think, there's so much rebuilding to be done. You're talking about, just whole entire swaths of this country demolished. Really horrible. Especially when you look at places like Aleppo or Damascus. These ancient cities basically just turned to rubble. And this of course opens up the vacuum for all sorts of jihadi groups. You look at some of these border regions in Syria, be it Iraq or Lebanon or other places. People are going to be coming and going as they please. So obviously the vacuum is there for jihadi groups. So in that sense, they have kind of won. They have been able to destabilize Syria much more than they've, ever been able to previously. But the regime, I think, will stay intact. I believe Assad will run for office again and will be elected. And I don't even think that's I personally don't even believe he's going to really have to rig the vote to do that. I think there are truly enough people that, when the alternative is al-Nusra, or groups like al-Zinki, beheading children, well, yeah, of course they're going to go for Assad. And you've even begun to see, like I said, the sort of stalwarts of the sort of Western regime change, even they are beginning to question what is really going on. I remember, when this all started several years ago, people made a big deal about the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. And it's basically one guy funded by, Western money, in England, who writes up these sort of phony reports. Even the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Christoph and I have used them much more than we ever thought we would, because even they are admitting, yes, in fact, Assad's forces aren't going in and butchering everybody in these towns that they're liberating. Instead, it's the other way around. These people are being used as human shields by radical jihadis, and, the only time they actually get to escape is when the Syrian forces come in. So I think all of this has sort of contributed. And I mention this because Syria is going to be one of the major, if not the biggest conflict that Donald Trump is going to inherit. For better or worse, this is something that he's just going to have to deal with on some level. And that will be important to see how that moves forward. Because I think, by and large, the Middle East is a region and an area that Trump just doesn't really care about, which is why I'm putting that, on one of my top geopolitical things to look at for 2017. I think it's a region that he only understands in the sort of broadest black and white terms, where there are good guys and bad guys, and ultimately, in his mind, everyone in the Middle East is a bad guy. Because they don't show America, the fucking respect that it deserves. That's his sort of, idiotic, macho New York sort of attitude towards that. So even the traditional allies, like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states and stuff, I think, Trump doesn't even really, at least rhetorically, he doesn't even really like them, despite the fact that, yes, of course, he's very, very invested all over the Gulf. They're always trying to build another Trump property in some, Gulf sheikdom. But I think that this is a region that Trump just could kind of care less about. So that raises the question of, if he's not paying attention to that, what is going to go on there? What's going to happen? If this sort of perceived friendship between Putin and Trump is real, how is Syria going to progress? what's going to be the next step for Syria? Is Trump going to, help to rebuild them? Is he going to give them aid? Is he going to give them support? Are we going to see a U.S. military base in Syria? And I doubt that immensely. And I'm sure Assad he's not stupid. He's still around at this point. But that will be interesting to see how that kind of moves forward. What are the next steps going to be? Is Trump even going to, really play a role? Is he even going to care? And on the Middle East, I think, again, the Middle East in general is always an area geopolitically stuff is going to be happening. And that's something that we should really be paying attention to, in 2017. But, besides the Middle East in general, I think Israel and Yemen in particular are two other places that we should really try our best to follow up on and watch very closely. So why Yemen? Because again, Yemen is another one of these conflicts that Trump is going to inherit. And this is a conflict that essentially the America has allowed to happen. Now, the U.S. is no longer as deeply involved on a sort of day-to-day level with in Yemen, like the drone strikes, like a lot of the sort of CIA programs and stuff. But we've allowed Saudi Arabia to do whatever the hell they want there. And basically, the U.S. has also made sure that nobody in the broader sort of populace has any idea what is going on in Yemen. The U.S. has blocked everything when it comes to, UN pronouncements, international reports, anything like that. The State Department just basically doesn't talk about Yemen anymore, while Saudi Arabia is completely destroying this country. Now, what happens in the void of that? Okay? Who fills that? Do we see Yemen becoming this sort of even more region infested with Al-Qaeda types, with jihadis? Does this basically become Saudi Arabia's new sort of breeding ground for all of this sort of stuff? Because ultimately, again, Saudi Arabia will be the power broker in Yemen. They will decide what is going to happen in Yemen. And how does Saudi Arabia fill that void? And then what happens? Are we going to use Yemen again? People, I think, sort of fail to remember, it kind of goes in the memory hole. But so much of the war on terror narrative directly comes from Yemen. Yemen has always been a very powerful proxy for the U.S. deep state, for the CIA, for these sort of, terror operations that is orchestrated. Yemen, many times it all goes back to Yemen. And that goes from, the fact that bin Laden is part Yemeni. His family, I believe it's his father is from Yemen. And then emigrated to Saudi Arabia. But there's a strong connection there. And again, there's a lot of 9/11 connections back to Yemen. You can look at President Saleh, who was of course overthrown during the Arab Spring, but has again resurfaced as a powerful I guess you'd almost call him like a warlord at this point. And he's of course made these sort of strategic alliances with various political and rebel groups in Yemen. So what happens in Yemen? How is that vacuum filled? And again, what does Trump do? If we start to see jihadis flocking to Yemen, which is somewhat likely, there's really no security there. There's Saudi Arabia can basically allow whomever they want to go in and out. Then what happens? Are we going to see some sort of terrorist attack, and it links back to Yemen. So Yemen is an important country to look at for a variety of reasons, but the biggest one, of course, being is that we have no idea what's really going on there. And that makes it ripe for God only knows what. Now, I also say Israel because, we just saw, as people will know, the U.S. sort of condemning Israel for its settlement building. Of course, they didn't vote against it. They just abstained, which is sort of a cop-out. That's just basically the easy way of, it's just the easy way of basically sort of condemning it, but you don't actually have to go, the full, basically, voting against it. I think that is another, Israel they're sort of due for a big one, I think, in terms of, relations between Israel and, Palestine, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Syria, the whole, Trump is always talking about how evil the Iranians are. Well, again, are we going to see, the U.S. and Israel start assassinating scientists again? And also, I think 2017, along with the fact that, Syria is coming to some resolution, I think that not that there's going to be some sort of resolution between Israel and Palestine, but I think that we're slowly dragging ourselves closer and closer to there has to be something. This can't actually exist anymore. And anyone that's, been following sort of Israel's internal politics knows that it is a powder keg. There is, the country has become so right-wing, so sort of psychotic and messianic that, at some point something has got to give. Now, this might be another, slaughter in Gaza. There might be another intifada, might take place. We might see more sort of draconian, steps towards, the West Bank perhaps, but I think that, Netanyahu has found an ally in, Trump. And again, Trump, Mr., alternative, he's gonna just, doesn't follow the establishment, fucking loves Israel, okay? And is not gonna go back on that. And I think we will see Israel again sort of, stepping back as, one of the major enforcers and proxy forces for Western policy in the Middle East. So that's another country I think to pay a lot of attention to. Again, because it's also, much in the same way as Yemen, has been kind of quiet. We haven't heard a lot from Israel in the past couple of months, and I think we are going to hear something. So that's sort of like my take for the Middle East and geopolitics. But of course, there's a lot more that I think Trump is going to have going geopolitically, or at least his administration. And I think the big one is actually China and Asia. That's where I think the true sort of fight, the overt battle is going to be. I think the stuff in the Middle East is going to be a lot more kind of quiet, or quickly before we get to Asia, let's say that Trump really just doesn't care what goes on in the Middle East. As long as he gets his oil, as long as they pay him more, he doesn't really care. Is that sort of an invitation to the CIA, which seemingly is not so cool with Trump? Is that just their sort of invitation to, well, we can just do whatever we want here? He doesn't want to get intelligence briefings? Fine. Then we'll do whatever the fuck we want to do. We don't have to tell him anything. And then when it does blow up, we'll just blame it on him. Which is like, again, not to get too off topic, but that's a really sort of terrifying, terrifying precedent that Trump is setting. This whole thing where he was, I don't have to read the intelligence, but I don't want to hear the same thing every day. I understand the knee-jerk reaction from the so-called alternative people that are supporting Trump. Oh, he's just, giving the middle finger to the big bad CIA, and you see, he's not beholden to them. Okay, sure. So maybe he's not beholden to them. But when you allow a shadowy, nefarious group that is so far-reaching, okay, goes beyond intelligence, is real, it enters into the realm of deep state or parapolitics, a group like the CIA, which is like almost is this sort of omnipotent, multinational corporation intelligence gathering militia, whatever, when you basically say, I don't really care what you're doing, you're opening the door for them to say, okay, well then cool, we're going to do whatever we want to do. And guess what? We don't even have to pretend to let you in on this sort of stuff because you don't want to hear the briefings. So fine. That's cool. Then we won't give you the briefings and we'll do whatever the hell we want to do. Hope that works out well for you guys. And that's like very kind of, not that it there's like a direct correlation or comparison with something, say like Iran-Contra. But again, that's just great CIA plausible deniability, because all they have to do is, well, no, we were telling him, or we tried to tell him, but he didn't want to listen. So, when, some horrific terrorist attack happens or something like that, then the CIA can use their favorite, phrase or action, intelligence failure, and they can blame it on Trump because he didn't want to listen to the intelligence. So just something to keep in mind. Again, there's this like sentiment out there that, oh no, Trump is great and blah, he hates the CIA and stuff. And okay, but him basically not caring what this, a group that's way more powerful than he will ever be. That's very dangerous. And again, that's a very dangerous precedent when you don't know what the CIA is up to because you can't be bothered to read a briefing. Very scary. But back to some of these sort of geopolitical things and what I think is going to be the kind of overt I don't want to use the term war necessarily because it's not going to be a war, but is Asia. And I think China in particular. And Trump is already kind of setting that up. He's like always kind of going on and on about China. Even in like the past couple of days, he's sort of upped the ante with China. He tweeted I think it was like on New Year's or maybe it was the day after New Year's. And he was tweeting about how China's so reckless and they're stealing our jobs and they're not doing anything about North Korea. Again, as Christoph mentioned in one of our recent episodes, that meeting or that phone conversation between Trump and the president of Taiwan, very significant. I think the media kind of missed out on what was going on there. That was a very direct sort of, middle finger to the Chinese government. And again, along with the sort of China thing, Trump is, of course, roping in North Korea with all this. So we have the North Koreans saying that they're nearing completion on an ICBM that could reach the United States. Now, is that true? I doubt it. Most of the North Korean missile tests are kind of failures. They do blow up nukes every once in a while. Obviously, they can do that, but a lot of their military technology is not very good. And they tend to use it as a way to, almost like a form of blackmail, where they will do some missile tests to kind of say, hey, we're here, we're not going anywhere, we have nukes, don't ignore us, and maybe, help us with a little bit of aid money, or at least to just sort of, show the world, show the West and America in particular that we're still here. We're not going anywhere. And you need to understand that. You need to respect us on some level, and it, unfortunately, when you get nukes, you should be offered some respect. Okay. Because, there's only so many people with nuclear weapons. And I think, and again, that's the only reason that North Korea went to attain nuclear weapons. That's the only reason that the Iranians ever, pushed their nuke. I don't think the Iranians were ever going to get a nuclear weapon, but they wanted to at least sort of, put the possibility out there that you're not gonna overthrow our country if we have if there's a possibility of getting nukes. I mean, that's why people get nukes. That's why Pakistan has nukes. That's why, we haven't seen a coup d'etat in Pakistan, orchestrated by a foreign power or by, jihadis or something like that. That's not going to happen. Same in any of these countries. Hey, I mean, why do you think nobody has ever, banded together to try and, kick out the Israelis and make it all into a homeland for Palestine? Because they've got nukes. But Trump saying that in response to the North Koreans saying that they're going to get this, he said the U.S. won't allow them to complete an ICBM. Now, what the hell does that mean? Is he actually saying or threatening that some sort of regime change? They're going to strike North Korea? They're going to blow up the weapons manufacturers that are working on this? They're going to start assassinating scientists? Again, very kind of scary, and people should take a moment there and just see the irony of that. Because in the West, it's always portrayed as the other way around. It's always the North Koreans that are the crazy ones that are sort of, off their rockers. It's always the North Koreans that are the ones making these sort of crazy pronouncements about how, they're gonna take over, destroy the decadent West and whatnot. And now we've got Trump kind of threatening them. So I think this should be looked at very, very closely. I think Asia, a lot of people talked about this sort of Obama's pivot to Asia, which didn't really happen, and it didn't really pan out the way that anybody wanted it to. I do think Trump will pivot to Asia much harder. He surrounded himself by some of the more hardcore China hawks out there. He has the sort of direct threats and things like that have been lately targeted either at China or other Asian nations. So North Korea, I think today, Pakistan. There was some official within his transition team or whatever that had some comments about Pakistan. They can't have a dual relationship. We can't trust them, and we need to ally ourselves with India. And of course, India, great with this sort of right wing, fascist Modi, the president there, just wonderful. Right up Trump's alley. And I think that's where the overt sort of stuff is going to be. I think that's where the kind of like over the top confrontational stuff. It's not out of the question that we see, U.S. carrier groups, off the coast of Taiwan in record numbers. That we start to see more sort of U.S. naval policing of things like in the South China Sea with some of the small islands like the Senkaku, which I think is the Japanese term. I'm not sure. But there's all of those sort of little islands everywhere. We might start to see that. So that's, I think for 2017, that's the thing to look for. And again, it's like this topic that I think, has sort of been, missed overall in the larger scheme of things. Everyone has been so focused on the Middle East, or Ukraine, for a while. That was the thing to focus on, or Russia, this and that. And again, the Russians and the Chinese, not super cool. They're not like, buddy. So, it makes sense that we might actually start to see, more and more sort of overt escalation, or confrontational stuff between the U.S. and China. So that's for, geopolitically, that's something, again, to really focus on. And then a few other little things here and there. I think Turkey, something is going to happen in Turkey. They've really been kind of building up to it. We've had the coup, or the attempted coup. We've got this Russian ambassador being murdered virtually on live TV, with the speed with which this video got out there. This sort of back and forth relationship between Putin and Erdogan. They're hot one day, they're cold the other. The sort of role that Turkey might play in whatever kind of resolution goes on in Syria. The Gulen movement, is it coming? Is it going? Are they going to kind of sort of up the ante with going after Erdogan, any of those sort of things. So, and again, Turkey is always an important role, and we should be concerned about that too. For what's the next step for the sort of CIA NATO cabal? What is their sort of end goal for Turkey? And where does Trump fit into all of this? I mean, he seemingly has nothing to say of any value on Turkey. Very important ally. For NATO, for the U.S., for the CIA, for NATO operations and all these sort of things. Where does Trump fit into this? What happens if there is some sort of another uprising or coup or the Gulenists do something? How does Trump respond to all of that? These are all really kind of like important questions, I think, geopolitically that we should look at. And ultimately, these will affect so much other stuff on down the line. Trump is all about his trade and these sort of things like that. Well, if he pisses off China enough, where are all these people going to go to get T-shirts? Not Walmart anymore. I mean, there's no, like he's always talking about the factories and these sort of things. They don't exist. They're all in China or Vietnam or Cambodia or, Sri Lanka, places like that. So, how does, what happens, when Trump said, we need to have a trade war. We need to get tariffs, cause it's really very free market, oriented. We need to start having tariffs on all these Chinese made goods. Well, that's cool, but there's nothing in America that's going, there's no cool, we're not buying Chinese made goods. Where do we get them from? Mexico? Central America? It's just not going to happen. So all of these things geopolitically will have serious ramifications on down the line. And I'm seeing now finally in the chat room, as I'm babbling, hi Jenny and hi Chuck. So maybe we, as we kind of wrap it up for this first hour, maybe we might get, Chuck on for the second hour so I don't have to babble, too much by myself. So we'll talk to Chuck and Danny, when we get to the break. But just to sort of, wrap up on some of the geopolitical stuff, really pay attention to this in 2017 because it's like a whole new ball game. We have no idea because Trump has been so, quiet on what his plans are geopolitically. That, we really have no idea where he's going to go with any of this kind of stuff. So it's really anyone's game. And a lot of stuff that has happened under Obama, he will have to deal with. Okay? So whether you hated Obama, you loved Obama, that's sort of irrelevant now because geopolitically, Trump is in, there's no way around that. So the geopolitical chessboard has been set. But how is Trump going to move these pieces around? And also, how does, the sort of steps that Obama has taken or the liberties that he's taken with, anything, declaring war on certain places, sending troops in, drone strikes, wiretaps, all that kind of stuff. Does everyone out there really think that Trump is going to reverse that? That he's going to actually start, following the Constitution? Of course not. Okay? He's going to use all of the tools in the presidential arsenal that Obama has set up to do God only knows what geopolitically. There's no way that he's going to lessen all of that kind of stuff. Now, maybe he won't be sending troops in or special forces or whatnot, but there will come a time and place where he will. There will be serious consequences from that. And who knows? He might get in and decide, we got a problem somewhere. Boom, let's just bomb them. Or let's send a carrier group over there to intimidate them. He's got all of this in his arsenal. And I don't know if people are fully cognizant of all of that. Well, anyway, we are coming up on the break. I will be joining you in the second hour, maybe with a guest. And I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Are you feeling embarrassed and stuck because you can't focus or concentrate? I have a confession to make. I spent years unable to think clearly, like I was in a fog. I was going through the motions, running my companies, and I hated feeling groggy and mentally sluggish. I couldn't get ahead like this. It's no secret the powers that be want us dumbed down. Chemicals, fluoride, our brains are under siege, and we are experiencing lower IQs. But now there's a weapon to fight back and win. Introducing DNA Evolve, a revolutionary breakthrough in a category of cognitive enhancers called nootropics. I've been using DNA Evolve and couldn't feel better. For me, it works. It feels great to get things done again and get ahead. Try a free sample for yourself at DNAEvolveSample.com. That's DNAEvolveSample.com. Supplies are limited, so go to DNAEvolveSample.com right now.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of micro plant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
What about show business? Show business, completely dishonest, corrupt, and full of shit, but in a nice way. Plenty of expensive drugs and perverted sex. If you're going to be full of shit, might as well enjoy your work. Then you have the media, not just the news media, let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore.
What has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Provide us with free education?
Well, that's obviously effective, but apart from reversing the dumbing down of America...
All the information they provide is free?
What about the free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, man?
Exploiting commonplace corruption?
They help vulnerable people who don't have a voice?
Bringing light to important information nobody else does.
Or they never censor, hang up, or cut off their guests? Well, that's no fun, is it?
Oh, they created a fantastic alternative media source during an era of bad, manipulative, and infiltrated mainstream and alternative media shows and scum.
Okay, well, apart from the free education, free information, free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, exposing commonplace corruption, helping vulnerable people without a voice, bringing light to important information nobody else does, and creating a fantastic commercial-free alternative media source in a sea of bad, manipulative mainstream and alternative media shills and scum, what has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Donate to American Freedom Radio today. No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City. Your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are just joining us right now, in the first hour, I rambled on quite a bit about some geopolitical predictions or things to look out for in 2017. This is my 2017 predictions episode, and thank the maker, Chuck Ochelli has joined us for the second hour. Chuck was the only one of my guests out there who responded to my various emails and Skype requests. So, Chuck, thank you so much for joining us in the second hour.
Well, not a problem, Pierce. Of course, I'm joining you live from Frankie's Playroom, so we may be momentarily interrupted by a toddler on occasion if he decides he wants to come to the mic and say something. I'm going to let him speak his mind. So,
yeah,
there we go.
Do. Well, great. No, go ahead.
You know, and here's the great thing. Here's that's the fire truck being flipped around behind me. Here's the great thing, though, is that arguing with a toddler is very much what I foresee this year when it comes to the likes of the Trumpster. So it might actually be a lot more sensible and coherent, whatever Frankie decides to babble, than the responses that we're about to see via Twitter. And, who knows? Does this guy have a Instagram account? Am I supposed to be afraid of that? I'm not sure. What next? And while we're at it, why not kick the fence as hard as we can at the oddly behaving dog that is North Korea? I love that. That's been a spectacular thing to watch over the past couple of days. Although when you analyze, did you see the Twitter thing that came out last night, or I think it was late last night from the Trump?
Yeah, we were talking about that in the first hour.
Okay, see, I missed that, but did you decipher what it actually means, Pierce?
When he was talking about not letting the North get like an ICBM or whatever.
Right. I mean,
I took that as Trump. I took that as like a threat. Like, we'll do something. We'll either. I sort of speculate. I mean, I don't know, but I took that as a threat, which could mean anything from. I don't know about regime change per se. I did mention that, but we start sending in people. We start assassinating scientists. We make them like our new North Korea. Our new Iran rather. With the,
interesting slip.
Yeah. Going after.
But see, let's look at this objectively. Is North Korea worth it from a global standpoint, from a resource standpoint? Is it actually worth any of the attention it gets? I wonder. They fail to launch. Exactly, Frankie. They fail to launch. Exactly, sir. They fail to launch their weapons on time. They have tests that kind of work, kind of don't work. I mean, it's basically children playing with matches over there.
Yeah.
And kind of a laughable regime. He takes the time to address them.
Yeah.
And still in complete denial regardless of whatever happened. I mean, the smartest thing to say about the hacking situation is that you don't really know. Does he actually know something? Well, gee, Pierce, today we were supposed to get treated to some information, some inside information.
Oh, that's right.
Only
yeah.
he knows. Did that happen yet? Did I miss it?
I did not see anything about that. I would have assumed that would have been, front page on, I don't know, anything, that sounded, eerily similar to like one of like Nixon's secret plans, to whatever, solve Vietnam or something. Like, I mean, yeah, it was like, what does Trump know that we don't know? Again, this is also, as I said in the first hour, the man that doesn't get CIA briefings. But he knows something about like to me, that his pronouncements about, none of our computers are safe or anything, that sounded, if that came out of the mouth of any other, let's say that came out of Hillary Clinton's mouth, everybody would be, with half a brain, would be thinking, oh, she's setting up for something. You know, this is the first step in some, I hate using this phrase all the time, but some sort of false flag or, some larger scale operation. She's priming the general public. She's getting them used to that concept so that then when it happens, we all kind of fall in line. But when Trump says it, it's, he's so smart. He knows stuff. He's really tuned in and he's a computer expert now. To me, that along, even with the sort of North Korea stuff, was like, he's just getting ready for something. This is like part of his sort of, cause it also sounds like the kind of like BS that he would do when he's like hyping a new building of his, he'd drop these little hints.
See, that's the funny part to me, Pierce. You actually believe he has a plan. I can't endorse that. I'm sorry, my friend. Strategy. You believe that that's there also. Well, if we were being strategic and we were being wise about what it is we're doing, and imagine for just a moment that Trump is intelligently maneuvering the grand chess pieces of diplomacy on the board, the smartest thing to do would be to keep your mouth shut. Actually. Yeah. But that doesn't happen because we're, compulsorily now set up in a system where the rantings on the Twitter account are headline news. I mean,
yeah, it is like pathetic that's like how we're, and the way that everyone just sort of gloms. Well, the other possibility, of course, is that he's simply just, he truly has nothing intelligence to say. He has nothing going on, He's basically just sort of sit on his ass waiting to get inaugurated. So he's just going to throw out anything, something to kind of get him back into the news cycle, something, a little titillating for his fanatic supporters out there. It's like every time Julian Assange and WikiLeaks has some, this is it, guys. This is the bombshell. This is going to take down the New World Order. And then it's like he either doesn't do the press conference or it's a press conference talking about something that, we already knew about 5 years ago. Like that could be the other possibility with Trump.
Yeah, well, see, now there you go. There you go again, Pierce. Why am I thinking back to these things, I wonder? Well, at the same time, we're also treated to this concept of the ethics portion of the congressional, the independent ethics board, right? Mm-hmm. What's happening with that? Oh, well, it's going to lose its independence. Fascinating that's being done today or in the past couple of days. The new Congress is about to be sworn in because remember, Inauguration Day is not till the 20th or whatever, but the new Congress is coming in now. And, laying the groundwork perfectly, the ethics investigators who previously were supposed to be independent can now be stopped by Congress during investigations. So I guess the lesson here, Pierce, is make sure you have enough people on board with the unethical activity so that you can have the votes to cancel the investigation into your less than ethical behavior. I don't know, maybe I'm missing the point of this and maybe I'm just, one of those conspiracy theory guys. I don't know, but that seems pretty blatant. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, I just, to kind of go back to the WikiLeaks and stuff, quickly. I just pulled up, RT, just to see the headlines and, WikiLeaks is vowing to blow you away in 2017 showdown. And I guess it's, it's going to be a no holds bar. Apparently Julian Assange is going to do like a Reddit AMA, I think, on Thursday to, hashtag proof of life to prove, I guess, he's not actually dead.
Well, that's because
so many people were saying.
Well, so many people that think that, the Assange stuff is so bona fide, which I question it at every step, by the way, need proof of that. Because after all, Hillary and her people were supposed to be assassinating him. And then other people were supposed to be assassinating him. And he's supposed to be, I don't know how many times I've seen already that he's been reported dead.
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So, well, hey, good move on his part. Make sure that people know he's still breathing, or at least those that are so extreme will sit there and say, well, actually, that is a piece of AI or a crisis actor.
Yeah, of course. No, definitely. Yeah. No, even if they were in the room with him, they wouldn't believe. But here's my quick question for you with the WikiLeaks stuff. Is like, what are they gonna expose? Is this just like, because it seems to me like WikiLeaks is now and this is not to say that like Assange and Trump are like, buddy or working together or anything like that, but certainly there has been this distinctive like shift with Assange where it is like we're only going to talk about Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. And then you have people like Roger Stone at least saying public, oh yeah, of course I talked to Julian. We're friends. So like is like throughout Trump's administration, like who's going to leak something? Are they going to leak something about the RNC to Assange? Would he even publish it? Would he want to risk the ire of the Donald over this?
Well, that's an interesting question. Exactly, Frankie. That is an interesting question. I think Frankie's response is probably the most intelligent to it. But here we go again. See, okay, let's rope this in for a second. To me, Assange and WikiLeaks itself reeks of an intelligence operation anyway. Okay? I don't know why. I do know why. I don't want to reveal exactly why I think that at this moment. But I will tell you that if you think about it very objectively, limited hangouts seem to be the fare of WikiLeaks most of the time. I mean, don't you think that's really what happens? Most of the time they tell us about things we already knew about.
Every
very
time.
much like Snow. And the curious thing is that if you imagine for a moment that Assange is exactly doing what he's supposed to, and you imagine for a moment that Trump is exactly doing what he's supposed to, think about it. We have massive distraction. We have all sorts of built-in controlled opposition separated in 8 different directions. Meanwhile, while the magician shows you his right hand, you're going to get robbed with the left. I mean, that's what's going to happen here. And it's not a left-right thing. I think it's a massive distraction thing. I mean, WikiLeaks is promising to release new stuff on torture. Well, welcome to the party, fellas. We've been talking about this for years now, and well, the mainstream occasionally pays attention to it, but only when the CIA issues a memo or the likes of Dianne Feinstein actually says something do they acknowledge it. But where is the big news going to come from WikiLeaks? I have no idea. They're going to have to do something really, really wild to make me believe for a moment that they're anything other than part of the controlled opposition. I mean, it's like Snowden. I sit there and I say to myself, it's unimaginable to me that this guy could have walked away with anything of significance.
Oh yeah, of course.
No.
Oh, and if you watch the Snowden movie, it's like even more ridiculous how he literally just like walks away with it.
Well, yeah, and what do you expect them to do with it?
Yeah.
A movie's a movie, and that's fine. And I'm wondering if we're going to see in this post-truth reality a disappearance of the historical dramatization. I wonder if that's going to just go away, because I don't think anybody wants the truth anymore. I don't think anybody wants the facts anymore. It really is starting to feel like sentimentality is what sells. It used to be sex sold.
Yeah.
But I think, people have become desensitized to that, and, there's an overabundance.
The least sexy thing on the planet has got to be Donald Trump, but, he's selling.
Well, that's the other thing here, right? Why is he selling? Because he appeals to a sentimentality that, for the most part is unspoken. See, here we go again, reloading back to almost the silent majority, sounding a lot like Nixon, which the mainstream is starting to compare him to Nixon, but here's what I think. If you take Nixon and dump him into a blender, and then you dump Reagan and, well, a few people that could not quite make the Special Olympics team into a blender, you get the presentation called the Donald J. Trump presidency. What's even more bizarre to me, Pierce, is the rampant speculation about the next grand conspiracy, which is going to target Trump. Have you covered that at all?
No. Go, please elaborate.
Well, there are speculations all over the internet in private circles, and some people are publicly saying at this point that they believe that Trump will be assassinated, Trump will be removed from office because he has challenged the controllers, and all of this, again, believing in the sentiment that he is an agent of change. Now, that being said, they also are talking about World War III being started, and how is it going to be started? The next great American war will be with Mexico because of all. And there are terrorists, ISIS terrorists, who are going to be introduced into the Southwest. And they're going to have the Stinger missiles that Hillary Clinton let loose, and therefore they're going to turn around and create chaos so that the Trump supporters get upset, and then they have a reason to strike back against us, and we're all going back to the FEMA camps, Spears. Don't you know that?
I know. I mean, it's like circling all the way back to the, they took our jobs, and we got to watch out for the Mexicans.
Jobs. Yes.
No, you know what? On that quickly though, because I talked in the first hour, Chuck. I was saying that Trump's statement that he doesn't want to be bothered every day with a CIA briefing. I know that the interpretation of that among some people in the alternative media is, that's him giving the middle finger to the CIA. That's him saying he's independent. He's not beholden to them, blah, blah, blah. And I said, my interpretation of that, of course, was the opposite, that he genuinely, I guess, doesn't care, but we should be terrified of that, because then that just allows the CIA to say, oh, okay, cool. Then we don't even have to pretend to update you on the stuff that we're doing. We're just going to do whatever we want to do.
Well, right.
And if we get caught, well, we'll just blame it on you. You didn't want to know about it. So, that I know that idea that he's going to be assassinated, that he's somehow, equivalent to, say, like a JFK standing up to the CIA. So they're going to have to take him out.
Absolute
so far-fetched.
Nonsense.
Yes,
absolute
so far-fetched.
And you know why? Because look, let's again think of this objectively. Let's remove our sentimentality from it for a moment, Pierce. How about that? Okay. Even if you don't trust the CIA's briefings, even if you don't trust the CIA, would it not be wise to listen to their reports and to utilize other intelligence assets to collect things and then compare notes to find out what it is the CIA is not reporting to you? Wouldn't that be the objective thing to do if I were, say, president? I think so. But hey, let's just take it as, well, he gave the middle finger to the intelligence community, so he's a good guy. Really, it's just foolhardy. It's foolish. The cabinet picks, the insanity. I mean, I actually saw someone on television, because I caught a piece of a TV show, and I don't watch TV often, but I caught a piece of a TV show where they were explaining that the Rex Tillerson pick is a good one, because we don't necessarily know how he's going to behave toward Russia. But we do know that he's familiar enough with them that he's got a good chance to get it right. I sat there in awe of that level of idiocy coming out of someone's mouth. And meanwhile, this is I'm not even going to mention who it is. The guy, it's a name you'd know. All right. Mm-hmm. It's just nobody even stops and thinks about this stuff. I think what we have is, again, an argument with a toddler. You cannot win an argument with a toddler. You simply have to control what they're doing. Now, I think that Trump himself is walking plausible deniability. Anything that is done, whether he did it or not, can be
Oh, and oh yeah, we were just breaking up there a little bit, Chuck. But no, and back on the quickly just on the Rex Tillerson thing. That is the deep state. Okay, I mean, you cannot get ExxonMobil. I mean, this guy is so connected to, again, these nefarious, shadowy organizations that actually run the country. You're talking about one of the biggest corporations on the planet, one of the most influential ones, an oil company at that. Okay? I mean, this guy, he is it's like, that's what's so funny is they're able to, dress up the deep state as change and different and alternative, and this is going to be good for all of us because he loves Russians, so somehow that means it's going to be great for all of us. And it really is just again, I mean, it's just reshuffling everything. But I could not believe right there with you, Chuck. I cannot believe how many people were like overjoyed over Rex Tillerson, as if somehow that represented something different from what we've always had. It's like so beyond the pale to me. Shifting gears a little bit, but sort of along the same lines, I guess, is, where do you see the alternative media for 2017? Because I've seen a couple of things, ideas, sort of floating around, on the internet and other places like that. One is that, the mainstream media is dead. We defeated them, guys, because Trump and Pizzagate and this and that and fake news, like the whole Proper Not campaign and the fake, Russia is controlling everything, that sort of backfired. So the mainstream media is dead. What do you even buy that for a second? Because I don't. I think it actually that most of that is sort of backfired. And the mainstream media has actually strengthened its resolve insofar as the people that believe the mainstream media are even more committed to it. And I think it's also kind of alienated people that were on the fence a little bit. And now they're like, well, if the alternative to the mainstream is, Pizzagate or Russian propaganda, well, I'm not going to go there, What do you think about that, Chuck?
Well, the people will not understand anything outside of the false left-right paradigm. So we have the alt-right. Now the alt-left needs to come in, and really that is not an alternative. That's just, guys who are a little too wild to be invited to the regular party decided to go somewhere else. That's all that is. And, with the declarations of the globalists have been freedom, you know who I'm imitating there. What are you going to do? It's really a strange time to be involved in this industry, man. It really is.
Yeah. Well, and what gets me too is like so much of the so-called alt media, like the alt-right, there's nothing alternative about, they're just right-wingers. They've always existed. They've always been like that. There's nothing alternative, about anything that they say. It's just they just repackage it. It's just younger people, getting involved in right-wing politics. So it's just younger, maybe, slightly more attractive people, hating Jews, blacks, women, gays, Mexicans, anything, any quote unquote leftist, ideology or anything like that. So there's nothing alt about any of those people, but they've become kind of socially acceptable. You look at like Breitbart. That's not alternative now. They're literally in the White House. So, I don't understand. It is like you said, it's this like kind of scary, industry to be involved in. And then of course you have all these sort of suspicious new characters and actors and, and I'm not using that, lightly. These are actors. They are acting. They're popping up everywhere. Suddenly again, it's, we all need to buy gold and Bitcoin. To stop, the Pizzagate monsters, that's how we do that. And they're popping up. And I'll be really interested to see, are they, is the alternative media just not going to hold Trump accountable? Are they just going to defend him, make up excuses? Because they've already been doing that to a large degree.
Right. And you know what I'm thinking is that this is exactly the time where we're going to see do or die for the alternative media. I think 2017 is the big turn. Either it's going to get swallowed up into, yes, indeed, the less popular mainstream media, and it's just going to become an adjunct to it, or it's going to have to change once again into something else. People are going to have to start thinking for themselves is what's going to happen again.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, for all this progress, you know, this like supposed progress that the alternative media has made, you know, as if getting back and, you know, getting involved again in the presidential election, loving the government, you know, as long as it's Trump, as if somehow that's alternative and that somehow is equated with, oh, we won. We beat it. We beat the New York Times. We beat CNN. It's so, I don't know if it's like if they're consciously aware that they're just living in a fantasy world, or if this is like, if they truly do believe that, you know, like that getting CNN to mention Pizzagate means they've won, you know, like that's their metric. I don't know. It boggles my mind, immensely. And, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it is like, I think they're just going to have to reinvent themselves or come up with they're going to have to evolve in some level. Cause I think, yeah, you're going to start seeing all of these, you know, quote unquote alternative outlets basically just being absorbed into the mainstream. They're going to become, you know, more like, I mean, I don't know. I hate saying this, but like you might almost see, you know, InfoWars as sort of like, you know, up there with CNN. You know, not in terms of like rhetoric or anything, but like in terms of numbers and people caring. And that's so funny. You know, the alternative media is constantly, they want to be like those, you know, they want to have billions of people listening to them, as if that somehow means that they, you know, that's alternative, to have as many viewers as CNN or MSNBC or Fox. You know, I never understood how that, you know, correlates. Like, you know, for instance, like, I don't have nearly as many fans as some of these big alt media, you know, outfits out there. But, you know, all of the people that listen to my show, and I'm sure you'd say the same, Chuck, for your listeners, are like, they're actually smart people. I'd rather have a smaller audience than, you know, like the sort of CNN type audience. So I think they're all mixed up. I think they basically, so many people in the alternative media secretly want to be famous, you know, and that's why they got into this. Is to have a name, to be a personality. They, you know, they want to be the Anderson Cooper of the alternative media, as much as they might, you know, I don't know, deny that or whatever.
Well, see, and that's the weird thing about, like guys like you and me. Quite honestly, if the crap in this world would stop, I would stop. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel about it. Is I'm here to answer the nonsense. If the nonsense goes away, I'll go make music or something, Pierce. That's what I'll do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I know. But it's not going away.
No. Apparently we have an abundance of it, and 2017 will not disappoint us. I mentioned to you before we went on, I'm waiting for the resurrection of Not Necessarily the News. Do you remember that show?
Very vaguely, only like, you know, just people referencing it, but, explain a little bit to the listeners.
You don't remember Not Necessarily the News?
I don't remember.
We did an episode on Pierce's, website, and also it's on mine, about South Park. We had to talk about the member berries. Tell people about that real quick, and I'll get into Not Necessarily the News.
Oh no, they know. I mentioned it early on that you know to go check it on Patreon, that we did a great bonus podcast for both of our listeners on South Park, and I think my listeners now are you know, whether they like them or not, know the member berries pretty well.
Okay, cool. No, hey, look, I'm not necessarily all caught up with everybody, but Not Necessarily the News in the 80s, because of the constant flubs and interesting imagery brought to us by the Reagan administration. You know, Reagan, you know, that solemn figure.
Pierce, yeah. The great, you know, hero of the conservatives.
Well, that solemn conservative figure was kind of, you know, rife, absolutely perfect for comedians to hijack different things he said, different things he did. It was a strange administration. Lots of people going to prison,
Iran-Contra.
Lots of odd behavior. Iran-Contra. The Ayatollah Khomeini interactions with the PLO. I mean,
White House callboys.
White House callboys. Don't forget that. Long before there was a Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Oh man. And it was an interesting thing. It ran on HBO. Gave us the word sniglet. Remember the word sniglet?
Yes. Okay. Now, yeah.
Okay. So there was, the sniglets, which were interesting. Lots of stuff like that. Jay Leno kind of ran with it with the odd or interesting headline, I think, for a while. And it was an interesting show, but I'm waiting for that kind of thing to come back where they sort of do a remix on the Trumpster, because this guy, if nothing else, has got to entertain us this year. What do you think?
That's what I'm hoping for. It's a good segue, because that was the other sort of aspect I wanted to talk about, like predictions. I want so badly for entertainment, for comedy in particular, to kind of have some sort of rebirth, or art in general, But I don't know. There's like part of me that wonders, is that going to happen? Because I'm surprised that we haven't already seen more. It's like Alec Baldwin is like, I don't really find him funny as Trump. Occasionally, he looks funny. But like, is it just going to be kind of that? Like, there almost seems like, the people that would be, making fun of him are like so pissed off at him that they can't be objectively funny, like they just sort of have to be so over the top, which is why I kind of like the South Park's version where it was Garrison, because just Garrison as Trump is so funny. But I don't know. I hope that happens, but I hate saying this because it makes me sound like so, I don't know, kind of on the right, but unfortunately I think there's too many liberals in Hollywood and in comedy that are just not that can't be funny when it's with something like this, and they're just going to kind of drop the ball on it, and nobody conservative or otherwise is going to make fun of Trump. That's just like taboo. So I don't know, because it just seems like if conservatives aren't going to do it, with the exception here and there, like the South Park and things like that, and liberals are like so pissed off that they can't stop and think for a minute and be like, let's craft something funny. I don't know. I'm not sure if we're going to get anything that's going to be really, really funny. Maybe. I don't know. But that's sort of my prediction. I feel like they're so upset. They're so angry they can't focus.
When it comes to the creative liberal out there, what you need to do is get over this whole Hillary thing, first of all, because you're going to have to present a new foil for this guy in the universe of comedy. There was a show called Little Bush for a little while. I don't know if you ever saw that. Did you ever see that one?
I saw that a little bit here and there.
Yeah, Little Bush was a good idea, and it just didn't quite take off because the sentimentality of the country, you had to stand behind the president because you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Yeah. But I think that something like that would be just absolutely perfect. Put them into the 10-year-old bodies kind of thing and run them around like that. So here I am pitching an idea for the creative types out there. I think Little Trump is the answer, and it would be just so perfect. It could be absolutely dismissed as satire until it's outlawed, and you guys would be revolutionary if you put it together. So get to work, animators.
Yeah, I know, please. Because there's like a distinct lack of any of that sort of like, and we need to stay sane for 4, possibly, God forbid, 8 years. We need to be able to stay sane. We need to be able to laugh, especially if, Kanye West is going to run in 2020. We're going to need all the help we can get. But
one step closer to President Camacho. Yes.
Oh my God. I know. It's like, I don't even know what to. I don't even want to think about that, you know, because it's like too much. Chuck, were any kind of like any stories that that you're going to be looking forward to in 2017, or at least that you're going to be following, like maybe some stuff that hasn't kind of like made as big an impression as it should have, say in 2016. Because I can think of a few, and I can list those. But what are some stories that you're looking forward to? They don't have to be like positive; they can be horrible, but that you're looking or you're going to be interested in.
Well, I think it's going to get a lot more obvious, the damage done to us by the nuclear industry. I think that it's going to be undeniable very shortly that we're faced with a lot of problems there. I think that the police state thing, which has been dropped by the alternative media again, is going to have to come back around, and it's going to become even more blatant, even more obvious, and then what are these people going to say who are all happy about the regime change we just saw? I wonder. No,
I think that's a great point. The police, cause, I mean, it is it's like the police are. It's almost like they just don't exist. It's like they're just. It's not a talking point anymore, you know. And I think there's a lot of I do think the few groups that were talking about it have slowly been co-opted, or at least sort of manipulated enough. But yeah, I know. I mean, exactly what happens when they start cracking down or I don't know, I mean, what happens when they start going after poor white people?
See what happens when they already have. That's the trouble here. They already have, not that you would know it. We still had hundreds of deaths this year in police interactions with citizens of all walks of life, of all alleged racial groups, of all everything. The only thing that is extremely prevalent here is that they are mostly men that are killed in custody. That's one thing that is blatantly clear. And with the most disproportionate racial group that was killed this year, which is being overly represented in that statistic, right?
No.
Oh, well, our friends, the Native Americans, are actually.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I would not be surprised. Oh, I mean, the epidemic of indigenous women in the U.S. and elsewhere disappearing does not exist to anyone in the media.
Right.
And that's a huge, I mean, like in Canada, but also here too, a lot. I mean, they just literally disappear and nobody even bats an eye.
And children are still disappearing, regardless of what's happening at Comet Pizza. Okay.
Yeah.
And ridiculously, nobody's covering that story either. Nobody is covering the odd thing that is coming up. Yeah, we had a couple of little blips about the Ministry of Truth being erected, but I don't know if I had this discussion with you or not. Did I talk to you about the Ministry of Truth with the NDAA this year?
A little bit. I mean, no, that's another one that is like just, went under the radar. Or it's like, oh, well, it's just Obama that did it, Like, it's not going to be a problem because Trump is coming in,
Well, here's the thing. Regardless of what you see being codified into law under the NDAA, let us remember that there was a charter for something called the CIA. Piers, I don't know, maybe my memory's fuzzy on this, but I think the CIA charter doesn't resemble even half of what the CIA actually does.
Oh, yeah, no, of course not. No. I always bring this up to people with the charter is the whole, the CIA can't conduct, domestic operations. And, even when you can kind of convince them, or they can convince you, oh, well, they're not really, and blah, blah, blah. And then you just say, just one word, Hollywood. The CIA is constantly involved in domestic operations because they're approving and writing scripts in Hollywood. If that's not a domestic operation, I don't know what is. But yeah, no, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, Hollywood, another good word is mockingbird. That's interesting too, Hey, how about 3 letters? CBS. I like that one. You know, what are you supposed to do at this point? So now we have to imagine outside of the charter what's going to happen. And what's already happening regarding internet censorship. Everybody talked about that a lot too. Where has that story gone, Pierce?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's funny the way that these stories it's not even like, oh, it's only a certain crowd talking about it. It's like they don't exist. You know, the big one for me in 2017, of course, is Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, he does not exist in anything now. Nobody is talking about, you know, again, very, very interesting timing with, you know, Pizzagate and all these other things, just as, you know, some serious progress begins with that case. Nobody is even, mentioning it, you know. Even these, like, puff piece books, like the one that James Patterson wrote and the one that Conchita Sarnoff wrote, I mean, they didn't even go anywhere. I mean, they seemed like their purpose was put it out there, so if somebody asked, so we covered it, don't worry, you know, move along, it's okay. You know, anything you need to know about, anything you need to know is in those two books, and, you know, they're not even that, you know, well written to begin with. So that is a one that I'm, you know, definitely going to look at. And another one, which I think also gets mixed is, like cannabis culture and drugs, like drug culture, the war on drugs, particularly in the U.S., because you know, the movement to legalize marijuana is becoming more and more, accepted, you know, thank God, by mainstream society. More and more states are legalizing marijuana, but you've got, what's his name? Trump's Attorney General, Sessions, right?
Yes,
you know,
right.
is so opposed to marijuana. You know, he loves states' rights, except when it comes to marijuana. So, you know, what's going to happen there? You know, people love to criticize Obama, rightfully so, for cracking down so much on states that have, you know, legalized or decriminalized marijuana. But, I mean, what happens when Jeff Sessions is like, no, that's it. Like, we're going to nullify that, you know? We're right. Just going to get, you know, it doesn't matter because you know, the federal government, the state, we have all the power, you know?
Well, states' rights work just fine for these guys so long as you agree with them. That's the deal there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll be really interested in, and that's another one that, you know, I think we should keep our eyes on is like, especially like marijuana, because that's become so, you know, it's almost not controversial anymore. Or at least the amount of states that are actually beginning to pass it, and then even like smaller, you know, municipalities and city, like, you know, even here in New York City, which will probably be, you know, one of the last places to legalize marijuana. We do have, I think, right now at least 2 medical marijuana dispensaries, you know, and more sort of steps towards decriminalization, which is great. But, you know, does Trump even have a position on this?
I can't think of him being asked that question. I can't recall it. Does he have a position? Who cares? Because Pierce is going to get rid of the Muslims. So, you know.
Who are selling us the drugs, you know?
Well, and you know what? The Muslims probably are selling us the drugs because everybody is. It's a free-for-all, and as long as you can get in touch with the Central Intelligence Agency, I'm sure you can get a distributorship. I'm waiting for the Freeway Ricky Ross of heroin to show up. That might be a breaking story in 2017, where we'll actually get a sacrificial lamb for the opiate industry. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Cause I think that's gonna be that is one of the elephants in the room in terms of like drug culture, is, you know, heroin and opiates in general, you know, pills like, you know, OxyContin and Percocet and things like that. That's actually a really interesting prediction, Chuck.
Because what's well timed here is that nationally now they're stopping the, you know, the drug pushing from the doctors. So what are people turning to that are already addicted to the synthetic opiate? They're turning to heroin, and there's plenty of it magically. You know, it seems to be everywhere, in fact. strange stuff, small town this and that now needs to go out and buy Narcan as a constant for their ambulances, don't they?
Yeah, I know. You look at like the statistics on, or just like that the Narcan is like, you start seeing like ads for it and stuff. There's like posters, that I've noticed in New York, and you figure, yeah, New York is a heroin problem. But, I think, by and large, New York has always been like, cocaine has always sort of like fueled New York, like nightlife and things like that. But even, now, but the small towns, that suddenly have these like, heroin warlords walking around is really shocking. Interestingly, that is like, Trump has said stuff about that, but I think only because he knows that there's a lot of, poor white people and rich white people affected by heroin. So now he feels the need to at least make a token acknowledgement of that. But again, I mean, he has no solution. It's a problem. We got to do something about it. And I got a plan. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry, because I know the best people, and I'm going to get the best minds on this because I know the best people, and we're going to solve this with no problem whatsoever. Good luck on that, if that's your position. It's not that simple. And heroin never went away. It never went out of style. It's just that there was way too much cocaine for a little while. But heroin has been with us, my entire lifespan. Heroin has been around on the East Coast in heavy concentration. Mm-hmm. It never did go away. It became a little more, visible as the whiter communities got touched by it. But when they pulled back on the pharmaceuticals being distributed, as I said, what do you expect to happen? Mm-hmm. Here we go, and it's ready-made. It was already here. There's so much of it that it's still actually one of the cheapest things you can get on the street. What does that tell you,
Oh, and right. And what the hell is he going to do? I mean, you talk about like the drug war, and like the CIA and stuff. I mean, heroin has always been their drug of choice. Cocaine was in the 80s, obviously. But, you can go all the way back to the, the Opium Wars and the Boxer Rebellion and, right. U.S. government involved in all of that. And then, Vietnam and so forth. And obviously, seemingly the only reason we, really got involved in Afghanistan is because there's just so much friggin' heroin, it's advantageous. It was advantageous for NATO and the CIA to go in there. Remember in the 1800s also was, great for menstrual cramps too. So, there you go. Introduced by an interesting German drug company as an answer to, guess what? Morphine addiction. Yeah. Which coincidentally, oh, wait a minute. That comes from the same plant. Okay. Yeah. Oops, my mistake. I misunderstood something there. Sorry, Pierce. Go ahead. No, just sort of thinking, what the hell? How's he going to, step up to that? And that logically, Trump's sort of response has got to be just an escalation of the drug war. It's not like he's going to actually, think about treatment or legalization or, some sort of solution. It's just, it's inevitably going to be, we just got to fight it. We just got to kill more of the drug dealers.
Well, right. Kill more of the drug dealers, lock up more of the drug addicts, keep the prison industrial complex good and well fed. You have now struck upon the key word for 2017 in my estimation, which is escalation. That is what we're going to see. Escalation in rhetoric, escalation in action, escalation in fictitious wars of all sorts, whether it's a war on terror, the war on drugs, or how about this, the war on your free speech. One way or another, I think that is the key word for 2017, Pierce.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could not agree more. Well, to try and end on maybe a slightly funny note, what do you make of the sort of like, Ivanka, in the White House acting as First Lady? Are we going to see like a kind of Game of Thrones, incest, ruling over America? Cause I know that, I make those jokes all the time, but it is pretty freaking weird. that Melania is just not going to be there, and Ivanka is going to have an office and act as first lady, and then just go and Google some of the pictures of the two of them, from when she was younger.
Right. Well, maybe Barron Trump. Maybe after Barron Trump finishes school, Melania will come in there and break it up. Who knows? But I think let's tie this right together with what it needs to go to, which is the interesting Mariah Carey incident on New Year's Eve. Because that is what we have here. We're going to have somebody lip-syncing as the First Lady. We're going to have somebody thinking that he's in charge, even though it is still a puppet post. We're going to have a lot of interesting changes. And, again, the entertainment factor is the payoff for everybody this year. Are your pockets going to get any more full? Is your belly going to get any more full? Is anything going to get any better for you? No. Is it morning in America? Well, it might be morning sickness in America, but enjoy the ride anyway, no matter what. That's the most hopeful thing I can think of to say here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no. Try to stay positive. Try not to, get so down on yourself, and obviously, have fun. Chuck and I, we laugh when we talk about this stuff. I always encourage people to, laugh as much as they can. Especially when you've got, Donald Trump, Rex Tillerson, and Ivanka in the White House all together, interacting with one another. But anyway,
I think of a line from the Kiss song that I heard when I was a kid, and I think it was from Detroit Rock City, where he said, I gotta laugh because I know I'm gonna die.
Seriously.
I gotta laugh because I know my country's gonna die. And you know what? Here's the positive spin. Last note. It may be that this is exactly what was needed to destroy the idea that this system in its current form was legitimate to begin with. It may be that we needed the clown to come in and sweep up the elephant and donkey crap once and for all. Maybe this is what was necessary. That's my biggest hope. How about that?
No, I agree with you. I've mentioned that to a couple friends lately. That is a real possibility, or that might actually, again, as you said, convince people. I think of all walks of life, alternative people, mainstream people, left, right. It doesn't really matter. This might actually be the kind of kick in the ass to be like, you realize this is all BS, or that, we don't have to do this. We don't actually have to have a washed up reality star as our president. Okay. And just as encapsulating that, you've now we have a washed up actor / governor now / reality star. Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be the head of Celebrity Apprentice. So, we don't have to go down that route anymore. We can actually, change. We can have actual change, or, we don't have to follow these psychotic idiots anymore. So keep that in mind. Have a safe 2017. Quickly, Chuck Ochelli and Frankie, thank you so much for joining me in the second hour. You were a godsend. And next week, I will be talking with the one and only Douglas Valentine, all about his new book, which of course deals with the CIA. So thank you all so much, and I will be talking to you very soon.
News and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.